Hello, students. Welcome. We're going to go over non-planetary objects today. So I have some interesting facts, and if you want to pull out your frame for non-planetary objects, you can fill that in as we go through the information, and you can check what you have, add to it. Remember, you might have found another interesting fact from somewhere else, so yours does not have to look exactly like mine. All right. So we're looking at non-planetary objects, and those are all about small irregular objects in our solar system that orbit the sun. And some of those objects are asteroids, comets, meteors, and dwarf planets. They're actually almost all pretty related to asteroids, except for comets. Comets are different, but asteroids, meteors, and dwarf planets are all pretty related. So your asteroids. Their physical properties. They're solid, rocky, and irregularly shaped bodies. And they're just the leftovers from when the solar system formed. So a lot of those leftovers got sucked in, and as they stuck to each other, they got bigger. And we know that as objects get bigger, they become, they have more gravitational pull. And so as they got bigger, they pulled in more objects, and that's how we ended up with the planets. It was stuff that got really big, and as it got bigger and bigger, it was able to pull in all of these objects and clear the area around it. Well, so the asteroids, depending on where they're located, are made of different substances. The ones near the sun are mostly made of carbon. And then as you get further away, some of them are made of silicates or silicate rock. And then as you get even further away, there are some metallic asteroids that are made of different types of metals, mostly iron, and then some other precious metals, nickel, osmium, platinum, gold, magnesium, rhodium. So a bunch of really cool metals that would be pretty expensive. There's some pretty expensive space rocks out there. All right, scientists estimate that the asteroid belt has between 1.1 and 1.9 million asteroids larger than 1 kilometer. 1 kilometer. That is a long distance. So 0.6 miles wide. So those are some pretty big asteroids. Now, there are millions of smaller ones floating around in the asteroid belt, as well as in the Kuiper belt, which is outside. Pluto would be part of the Kuiper belt. So it's another asteroid belt that's out past Neptune. And then another cool fact about asteroids is in 1990, asteroid 1998 OR2 passed at a safe distance, some 4 million miles, or about 16 times the Earth-Moon distance. And that happened yesterday. And it's the biggest asteroid to fly by Earth this year. So we won't have any asteroid impacts like the dinosaurs did this year, which is good news for us. Another cool fact about asteroids is some of them actually have their own moon. So 243 Ida is an asteroid that has its own moon. And since then, they've found a bunch of asteroids that actually have their own moons. So if you're filling in your frame, we have asteroids. Physical properties, they're irregular. Ooh, you should add that they're solid. And they can be carbon or metal. Location, mostly found in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. And if you're a super great student, you'll want to add that sometimes they're found in the Kuiper belt, K-U-I-P-E-R, the Kuiper belt, which is outside of Neptune. They orbit the sun. Sometimes they pass close to Earth. Sometimes they hit the Earth. We'll learn more about those when we talk about meteors. And one flew past Earth yesterday. Pretty cool. Bet you didn't even know it happened. All right, on to comets. Comets are made of mostly rock and ice. They usually have tails, which are made of ice and debris sublimating. So sublimation is what happens when you have dry ice. And you know how it's like steams? It looks like it's steaming when you bring it out of the fridge. So what's happening is it's going directly from being that solid hunk of ice to being a gas. It skips the liquid phase. And that's what's happening in comets as they get closer to the sun. That ice that's in the comet turns directly into a gas, and so you get that steamy tail. It's not actually steam, it's a gas coming from all the different types of ice. So when you have that block of dry ice, it's actually carbon dioxide that's been frozen. So it's frozen carbon dioxide. You can freeze stuff, right, other than just water. So there's a lot of different types of gases in those comets. And when they go from ice straight to gas, we call that sublimation, and that's what causes the comet's tail. They also orbit the sun in huge elliptical orbits. There are some comets we might only see once every 250 years. Some of them have really huge orbits. Some of them we might see once every 7 years. So it just depends on the comet and how big its orbit is. We have a newly discovered comet, which is pretty cool. Like, everything happened in this last month. A lot of different things in outer space. Comet Swan has already developed a tail. It was designated, its name, and it passed close to Earth the other day. We could see it actually last night, and it's going to continue being close to Earth until May 13th, and it'll be closest to the sun on May 27th. And then it will head on back out into outer space until it comes to visit us again. All right, so to review comets, if you're filling in your frame, their physical properties, they're mostly made of rock and ice. You can add that part about sublimation. That's a change of state. Location, they have very elliptical orbits. Remember, an ellipse is like an oval shape. And they orbit the sun, and they're only seen once every many years. And then my choice of neat fact was that the comet Swan was discovered in March and can be seen from Earth now. But you might have a different fact. All right, meteoroids. Now, meteoroids are basically just asteroids that have entered the Earth's atmosphere. So they're just space rock and dust, and they burn up as they start going through the atmosphere because of all the friction from the air against them. They start burning. And so we call them meteors. They just have a different name. Now, when it survives the trip through the atmosphere and actually hits the ground, we have a meteorite. And people find those a lot of times in the desert. There's people that go searching for them. Scientists, of course, like to study them, but at this point, we pretty much know what they're made of and where they come from. So unless it's a special one, they're not that interested anymore. And then meteoroids are objects in space that range in size from dust grains to small asteroids. Space rock. Okay. Meteors, recently, so between April 20th and 22nd, we could see the Lyrid meteor shower. And some people call them shooting stars because they look like a moving star, but they're actually, that streak is just from them burning as they enter the atmosphere. Now, the Lyrid meteors are actually little pieces of debris from a comet that passes by. And those debris pieces get left in the sky, and they actually fall every year, even though the meteor only passes by every 415 years. So, or the comet passes by every 415 years. But the stuff it leaves behind hangs out in space and falls every year. So we see the Lyrid meteor shower. Right, so our physical properties of meteors, we have space, rock, and dust. It's burning up in the atmosphere, so it has to be either Earth's atmosphere or it could be another planet's atmosphere. We just usually talk about them from Earth because we see them from Earth. We don't usually see them when they happen on Mars. Their movement, they're going through the atmosphere, possibly hitting the ground, and they're probably what killed the dinosaurs. So this meteorite, so the story goes, this meteorite came down, went through the atmosphere, hit the ground. There was a huge amount of dust that was pushed up by this impact, and it caused the sun to be blocked out, which we know the animals and, well, plants specifically couldn't survive. And without the plants, the animals couldn't survive. So there was a huge die-off. And then all the tiny mammals who could live underground, who could eat other things, were able to survive. and that gave rise to the next age in time, geologic age, of the rise of the mammals. All right, dwarf planets, everyone's favorite because we all love Pluto, right? They're too small to clear the area of other debris. So they're really big asteroids, but they're not quite big enough to get rid of all the other asteroids near them. So we call them dwarf planets because they're just not quite as big as planets are. But they're pretty special asteroids because they're the biggest ones. So we have a couple different dwarf planets. We have Pluto, which is probably the most famous, and that's out in the Kuiper Belt, pretty far away from us. Fun fact, Pluto actually comes closer to the Earth than Neptune does during some times of its year, or during certain times of its orbit around the sun. I thought that was kind of cool. We also have some asteroids in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, like Ceres is one that's in between, and there are a couple others that are less known that are in that asteroid belt. They're just really huge asteroids. So here's our main idea is dwarf planets. Dwarf planets are too small to be planets and too large to fit into any of these other categories. They have a slightly irregular orbit. They're located in the asteroid belt and in the Kuiper Belt, mostly. Sometimes there are other places. And Pluto is one. All right, so there you have it. I will leave it to you to write your so what. What is important to understand about all of these objects? So be thinking about that and write down some good answers and make sure you upload your frame so I can take a look. Right, next week we're going to be doing a catch-up week, so there won't be a live lesson, there won't be any video lessons, and there won't be any new assignments. You'll just be responsible for your check-in question and then doing any makeup work you want. I'll post some extra credit stuff, but otherwise, check Portal. Anything that's a 0, you can make it up. If you have questions about it, if you don't know how to do it, message me through Portal, and I'm happy to answer all of your questions. All right, guys, see you later.